All right, we are going to go ahead and get started. I always do the quick introductions in the beginning, so it still gives folks the chance to join and not miss any of the exciting material that we have today. So without further ado, I'll go ahead and get started. So welcome to the Adaptive Cloud community call, everyone. If this is your first time joining this call, welcome. This call is focused on the Adaptive Cloud community product and service updates. So topics range from Azure Arc to Azure Stack HCI to Azure IoT and AKS. Presenters today will go over their topics, and then at the end, if we have time, we'll engage in a Q&A session. If you want to use the functionality, I'm not sure we've had issues in the past. I've tried my best to fix the issues, but you should have a Q&A button at the top to the left of the people icon from Teams. If you don't, feel free to post your questions in the chat if you have any, but at the end, we can engage in a Q&A session if we have time. But we have these calls the first Wednesday of every month. So as a reminder, this is a call that is non-NDA. So feel free to publicly, discuss all the products and services discussed today. So flipping to the next slide here is our GitHub page. So this is a public repository. It's available to you now if you want to go and check it out. There we have all of our previous meeting links and recordings, some additional Adaptive Cloud resources, and the regular calendar invite. So if you want to regularly add this, we have a .ics file that you can download there. I will note that it expires in January, so we will be updating it with a new one. So folks that are joining from that .ics file, just know you won't have it on your calendar probably in January, February timeframe. We will be posting a new one, but I'll make sure to let everyone know in the Teams channel. With that in mind, like I was stating before, we do have a recording. So this call is being recorded as we speak right now, and it will be posted to our YouTube page. So if you have colleagues or coworkers or friends that were interested in joining today but couldn't, no worries. This call is recorded, posted to our YouTube. They can watch it anytime they want. We also have our most recent LinkedIn group for the Azure Adaptive Cloud community. Feel free to join there. There we have regularly been trying to post at least more product updates, even for those that are internal here for Microsoft. Feel free to use that space to post any announcements that you might have. I know Ignite is coming up soon, so I know that there's going to be some super, super exciting announcements forthcoming. So with that in mind, specifically Ignite, I will go ahead and talk quickly about the Ignite show floor interview opportunity. I know I had mentioned it briefly in our last call, but wanted to call it out as the last call for signups, I guess, since Ignite is at the end of this month, within like 2 weeks now at this point. So it's quickly approaching. But if you aren't familiar with our show floor interviews, we are excited to announce that we are doing something new at Ignite, doing quick 5 to 7 minute dynamic interviews done at either our booth or your booth if you have one. And it's really just a way to talk about any product updates that you have, anything that you want to showcase. If you have a demo, our booth can even support that. But it's just a quick conversation that's dynamic to talk, like I said, about product updates, going through, what you're showcasing at Ignite, and that type of thing. So if you are interested, feel free to check out our LinkedIn post. I linked it there in the resources, or you can reach out to me directly. I have my contact information there. I will say slots are filling up quickly. We do have quite a few customers and partners. I know some of the Microsoft MVPs I've already reached out to, but if you are interested in participating in one of these interviews, just let us know. Without further ado, I will pass it over to Thomas.
Yeah, thank you very much, Kiana. Let me quickly take control of that. We have a very quick update this time for the Arc Jumpstart. And we have, like, for this month, we had a couple of kind of like a maintenance release. So we had some critical updates and bug fixes for ArcBox, as well as for Agora, and obviously for Azure IoT operations, as you can see here on the screen. We also listed some of these, so you can see some details there, what we actually fixed. Again, if you have issues and find errors or bugs in Jumpstart, please feel free to actually do this on the GitHub repository page. You can open up an issue, and we are going to have a look at this as well. For the moment, I just want to highlight a couple of things for the future. Again, I can't talk that much about it, but we are a very exciting time ahead. We will have obviously some big announcement around Ignite, which is in 2 weeks, but we will also have something very special announced next week. So keep an eye open. I can't talk about it yet. Keep an eye open for some of the stuff we're going to post on social media and obviously also on the team's channels. We will have something really fun, and I hope like a lot of you contributors will be part of it. So yeah, can't talk too much about it, but like the whole team is very excited for next week, and obviously also for the week of Ignite. If you're coming to Ignite, again, reach out to Kiana for the show floor interviews, as well as obviously just come by and talk, right? We are happy to meet with the community. We will also have a little bit of swag, so make sure you come by and say hi. Thank you. That's from my side.
Awesome. Thanks, Thomas. I think next we have the Arc server update. So do we have Arnav on the call?
Yep. Hey, everyone.
Perfect.
Sorry, let's hear. All right, I'll go ahead and try to take control there. And then we're going to navigate to the next slide. So we've got some updates for you all with Arc-enabled servers. So we did have an agent release in October. And so with our October agent release, we have expanded support for ARM64 with Linux distros Ubuntu 20.04, 22.04, and 24.04, as well as Azure Linux 2, Amazon Linux 2, and Alma Linux 8. We've added in as part of this architecture detection for system properties and fixes for guest configuration being unresponsive. So we have all of this documented, including some of the agent fixes, as well as this expanded support in terms of what's new with the Arc connected machine agent. And below here, you're actually seeing something in preview that I'm going to showcase in just a second, which is the ability to enable management services at scale for Azure Arc-enabled servers, which is a new capability that's going to allow you to select one or more machines, enable and configure one or more management services like change tracking, inventory, update manager, monitor insights, and defender. So this is a great new capability that's going to be really helpful as you think of reducing that time between onboarding and then deploying management services, which you know is critical. And the other big news is, and you've definitely seen this, is Windows Server 2020-25 went GA. So Windows Server 2025 going GA. There's a bunch of Azure Arc capabilities with Windows Server 2025. And so one that we really wanted to showcase, and I'll show right now, is the Windows Server pay-as-you-go capability. And so this is available for Windows Server 2025, where you're able to purchase consumptively. You're able to purchase pay-as-you-go Windows Server licensing, like what's available with SQL Server as well. And this is consistent with the Azure Windows Server licensing experience as well. And something to note is, when you enroll in this Windows Server licensing pay-as-you-go, there's a breadth of Azure management services. I know previously we've talked about the capabilities like best practices assessment, accelerated networking, site recovery configuration itself, Azure Update Manager, change tracking inventory, machine configuration, and you get access to all of those, no cost, for your Arc-enabled servers that are enrolled in pay-as-you-go, contingent on some ingestion and compute storage costs that are going to be continued to be incurred. So it's a big cost saving for our customers who are interested in using Windows Server licensing and coupling that together with their usage of Azure Arc enabled servers. So just to show this really briefly, I'm going to switch screens here. I hope people are able to see my screen. Yes? All right, perfect. So here we are in the Azure Arc page, like you know, and we've specifically navigated down to this tab for licenses, and you'll see a new Windows Server Azure Benefits and Licenses tab. And here, what you're able to do is there's a pay-as-you-go tab, right? And with pay-as-you-go, we're going to detect all of your eligible 2025 machines. And what you're going to be able to do is you're going to be able to select one or more Azure Arc-enabled servers that are connected, and you're going to be able to enroll them or activate them in pay-as-you-go licensing. Now, in this case, this is a disconnected server, but you can imagine that for an eligible connected server, right, you're going to be able to click that, and that's going to allow you to enroll in pay-as-you-go. And you can just as easily deactivate or unenroll from pay-as-you-go as well. And so we're really excited about bringing this pay-as-you-go capability with Windows Server as well to your Azure Arc enabled machines. And again, this is for 2025 Windows Server in particular. And you'll see that there are additional management services and capabilities on that per server resource. So if we double click on one of these resources, you'll see a new Windows Server Management tab. And be sure to check out all of these new capabilities like we were mentioning, like remote support, the configuration of Azure Site Recovery, best practices assessment, etc., that are coming with Arc-enabled servers for your pay-as-you-go machines. Now, the last thing I wanted to just quickly showcase here is under the Machines tab, this is the at-scale solution onboarding piece. And so with our at-scale solution onboarding, what you're able to do is you're able to select one or more eligible Arc-enabled machines. And so you're going to pick this one that's connected, and you're able to click Enable Services. And when you enable services, we're going to actually allow you to configure capabilities like change tracking, inventory, where you're able to edit that and specify your log analytics workspace. You're also able to enable Azure Update Manager from a patch assessment perspective, and Azure Monitor Insights, where you're able to get insight into kind of key performance dependencies, etc., through the VM Insights ability, and you're able to specify your logging workspace. So this is also a big change where, here I've just picked one machine, enable these services, but you can imagine how powerful this is in terms of having a setup of a bunch of different machines and being able to enable these management services at scale. So you can go ahead here, click enable, and what that'll do is that'll enable the management service for those selected machines. And I picked one here just for a mini demo, but you could pick dozens and dozens of machines, configure at scale, and again, reduce some of that time between onboarding and deploying and delivering these management services, which can be a kind of cumbersome day two activity. So with that, that's a wrap in terms of what I had planned for Arc server updates. And, there are some exciting announcements we have for Ignite. So the Arc server team is definitely looking forward to meeting folks there with the Adaptive Cloud community at Ignite. With that, I'll hand it back to you, Kiana.
Awesome. Thanks, Arnav. And I don't know if you just want to take this question now, but it looks like James had a question he dropped it in the chat. When you use setup of Windows Server 2025, you get the option to, will that install Azure Arc for pay-as-you-go license?
Yes, I believe that there is a setup with the Azure Arc Windows Server 2025, like a wizard, to enable Arc and enable pay-as-you-go as well. So that could be an option, correct?
Great. And I think Kevin also had a question in the Q&A. Are you thumbs up from you all if you're able to see the Q&A section? I know we've had issues in the past. Yay? Okay, great, wonderful. But yes, Kevin had a quick question. Assuming you will be able to enable/disable pay-as-you-go via CLI as well.
Yes, that's correct. All of the configuration docs are available, and I think they're in that slide as well. So you'll just find it in our documentation. What's new with the connected machine agent? Oops, it's taking a second to load. It's usually quite quick. Here we go. But under our docs, you'll have a section for Windows Server pay-as-you-go under scenarios. So under how-to guides, we have Windows Server pay-as-you-go, and we both have the configuration guidance and the billing service guidance as well that can provide more information. And here we specify the portal experience as well as the CLI experience. So I'll go ahead and I'll drop this in the chat.
Perfect. Thanks, Arnav. So
Awesome.
I will go ahead, take control back, and then Andres, you were up once this starts presenting. I know this is going to take me to the first slide because it always does. Okay. Resume.
Let me see. Take control.
There we go. You should be.
Okay, good to be here, everybody. Thanks, Kiana, for having me and all the team here. I got 5 to 8 minutes, and I wanted to present today on a Bicep template in an Azure accelerator, an Azure IoT operations accelerator that we just developed. My name is Andres Padilla. I'm a principal data AI and engineer. And my passion is IoT and everything moving and getting AI to the edge. Back in April, I spoke with Luis Castillo and I said, hey, I want to help develop that narrative of how we bring AI to the edge within Azure IoT operations environment. And she's like, run with it. And we got together with some of my teammates there, Victor Santana, Remco Plug, Alex Morales, and Niraj. And I'm going to move forward so you guys can see what's going on. But basically, the story is we wanted to make your life easier to bring AI into Azure IoT, Kubernetes, K3S clusters. Just that whole mix and the interplay and the interaction of services. Just with Kubernetes, customers that I've encountered, they're sort of like deer in headlights. They're like, what's going on here? What am I deploying? How do I get this working? And what we developed was a Bicep template that pretty much gets you there 95% of the way. And my goal is threefold. One, to show you how to bring custom models developed in Azure AI Studio into a Kubernetes cluster using Azure IoT operations, bringing OpenAI into that, and bringing small language models also into that. So what happens is that if I share my screen really quick, actually, let me go to the next slide. With the Bicep template that we developed, you deploy everything that you need. And we make your life hopefully a little bit easier. So you can see, oh, wow, I know what resources I'm going to deploy. I know how to deploy Azure IoT operations. It deploys a Kubernetes K3S cluster for you, installs all the extensions, installs the namespaces for you. And then on top of that, it deploys 2 additional applications, one that's called Cerebral that I'm going to show Claes in a second that I'm hoping that you guys are all seeing. Another one is a Streamlit application that also shows you how to bring in Azure OpenAI into the mix. Now, there's some work that needs to be done, and we got a call last week from the Azure IoT operations PJ, and they said, hey, we love this. Can you take it further? And we're working on taking it further. But all in all, that is the high-level architecture that you deploy. And my game plan and our game plan is to make it easier for you to just interconnect all the pieces, bring AI into the edge, make it easier so you have line of sight and you're like, oh, I know how these pieces fit together. I know how they talk to each other. And I don't have to go through, a ton of documentation, a ton of samples, reading in between all the tea leaves and doing it for yourself. There are some great material that we have for you. All these aka.ms links that are in there for you, please go ahead. There's a great mind map, and I'm going to share my screen now so you guys can put a little bit of pictures better than a ton of words. So we have a great mind map. In this mind map, we talk about a lot of what it takes to bring edge AI to the edge, and we have a section that's being developed for AIO. But what we talk to customers about is they'll ask us, they're like, wow, how do I bring and put a model closer to the edge or on a factory floor? And this is what this mind map is built for. Our Jumpstart drop was deployed, got published about 2 weeks ago. Thank you to Leor, thank you to Kiana for helping us go through the process of getting us in there. It's right there for you to take, and then if you click on this, it'll actually bring you into this repository. And this repository, what it does, the key features is, hey, I want to bring ML, build a custom model. I want to use Azure OpenAI, or I want to bring a small language model into that Kubernetes environment. The template, if you deploy it, it will deploy everything you need in that Bicep template. The main, it's deploying everything that you need from all the ancillary services to the big ones, which is your Kubernetes cluster, to Azure IoT operations. At the end of the day, once it takes 30 minutes to deploy, just an FYI, you'll get something that looks like this. Nope, that's not where I want to go. You'll get a resource group that has, and let me get in here. Let me move this out of the way. It'll deploy all these resources. And the first line of attack, like I said, hey, help me bring a custom-made Azure ML model. Well, we deploy the notebooks for you. We'll upload them into it automatically, and then you just run this notebook. This notebook, what it does is it creates and registers a classification model. It will create the endpoint for you, and that endpoint points into the Kubernetes cluster that has Azure IoT operations. It'll also register the Azure ML extension, which is the bridge of taking, hey, I'm using Azure ML to create my model. Now I need a horse or a bridge to get it over into that container. So we'll register that bridge. It will register the Arc enable your cluster. It will create all the namespaces for you. And it will create the extensions. And the important extensions that for Azure IoT operations are all these goodies. And then the one for Azure ML and Azure ML Studio is this one. This uses the latest Azure IoT operations version. No longer 0.6, it's on 0.7. On top of that, we deploy, and this is coming from Armando. Oh, Armando, I forgot your last name. Forgive me for it. All his work that he did with Cerebral, he deploys, and we're just saying, hey, we love what he did all the work he did there with Cerebral. What that Cerebral component does is deploys an InfluxDB into a container, and it deploys an application that talks to InfluxDB, brings the telemetry that's coming from Azure IoT operations, pumps it into the application, and then you can use Azure OpenAI to get some insights. We also deployed for you an application, a Streamlit application that lets you talk to OpenAI, so you can see how to get that into a container inside Kubernetes cluster, how to do it with LangChain, and how to bring a local SLM into the mix. So now, what have we hope we've accomplished with this? We've cleared a lot of the clutter out for you. It gives you a line of sight. Granted, you're going to have to go back and do some hardening with this deployment, some security hardening, but all the major buckets and pieces are along the line. Your job is to deploy, go into those buckets, and fill them in the way you want. Last thing that I want to mention is that, and back to my slides, stop sharing, and how do I get back to the slides? And Kiana, if you can help me there.
Yes, I was going to say I can pull them back up.
Yeah, and there's one last slide that I just wanted to show you. They made some great announcements back in Airlift. I don't know if any of you had any chance of following those Edge AI Airlift sessions, but there was a great one that they worked on. And what they're planning on hopefully doing, they announced it in Airlift. They're going to make some other announcements come Ignite in about 2 weeks, and go to the last slide for me, Kiana. There.
Perfect.
Right now, we have what's called the Azure ML extension that helps us build that bridge of getting a custom-made model and pulling it into a Kubernetes cluster. What they're building for us, which is really great, is the ability to take those RAG scenarios, those RAG applications, SLMs, instead of going through all these hoops in order to get those applications, that SLM, into a container, into a Kubernetes cluster, to talk to Azure IoT operations. They're building what's called Edge RAG extension, which will make your life way easier to get those AI scenarios into this type of environment. So now you can run, throw Gen AI into your factory floor that much faster. Please go in, deploy it, take a look at it. We're working on the next version, version 2. There's a video coming shortly to show you how to deploy that, so you don't have to fumble through the deployment and the deployment instructions. We also included some Postman samples in there, so you can hit those endpoints. And we show you how to use port forwarding in order to talk to the applications if you need to get and do some debugging. Deploy it, debug it, hit it, break it. Let me know what you think. Hope you like it. Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. Thanks, Andres. So over to Truman now.
Yeah, hello everyone. Excited to talk to you today. Let me go ahead and take control. So nice to meet you all. My name is Truman Brown. I'm a technical program manager on the Azure Stack HCI migrations team. And I'm really excited to share our latest solution that we've been working on for a long time now. It's finally public and it's quite the hot topic. So I'll be talking about Azure Migrate from VMware to Azure Stack HCI today. So first, I'll just start with a quick overview of what our solution actually is, 7 key features of it so that you can understand from the highest level view. I'll give some updates based on it as well, and then I'll also go over a quick moving architecture diagram with a lot of moving parts to give a quick overview of how it actually works technically without getting too deep into the weeds or doing a demo. So first, let me talk about the overview of what Azure Migrate from VMware to Azure Stack HCI is. So the solution in simple allows you to migrate your VMs from VMware to Azure Stack HCI, so on-premises to on-premises. But there's 7 key features of this solution that really make it more favorable than other third-party solutions. So the first is that it's easy to use and you can use it at scale. So our solution interacts with vCenter directly. It has a very cool way that it does it, and it supports agentless migrations. This is very key because we've been working with users that are migrating hundreds of VMs at a time. And so they don't need to go in and install an agent on every single one. We interact with the vCenter APIs directly so that it is an agentless solution. Additionally, it's very feature rich. So right off the bat, we support VMs with multiple disks. So this covers most workloads. If it's database workloads, web server workloads, whatever it is, if it has an OS disk, if it has multiple data disks that it's writing to and reading from, we support migration of all of those. They stay correlated throughout the entire journey so that the workloads will work post-migration. Additionally, it's fully configurable. So oftentimes with these modernization and migration movements, users want to change vCPU, RAM, storage, reconfigure their disk sizes, all of that. You can do that all as part of the Azure Migrate experience in the Azure portal itself. And then additionally, we have some very exciting upcoming features. First is private endpoints. So we're offering a more secure way to connect to the actual storage account in the cloud that holds all of your metadata for your migrations. And we also have static IP migration support coming up, which has been the most asked for feature in private preview. And now it's coming soon now that we just went public preview. This is key as if you have workloads configured with static IPs on your source. You want to ensure that those remain on the target so that your workloads will just continue to run without any hassle, without any reworking the network and all of that. Third, this is all cloud-based orchestration. So like it says in the name, this is using Azure Migrate. So Azure Migrate has existed for years now. It's been the Microsoft prescribed way to migrate workloads from on-premises to the cloud. And now we simply extended it to be on-premises from VMware to on-premises to Azure Stack HCI. So it's a really great control plane. I actually put a few screenshots here to the right of what it looks like from the portal side. Sorry if it was a little bit small, but basically it gives you a single pane of glass to see all of your discovered VMs. You can select which ones you want to migrate to. You can do this. You can do all of these across different projects for organizational sake. But it is that cloud-based orchestration. Fourth, it's fully on premises. So your data, your disks themselves remain entirely on premises. We have the cloud-based orchestration, but the actual data does never go up and down to the cloud. It stays on-prem. So if you have privacy concerns, anything, security concerns, that is all remaining on premises in your network itself. Fourth is no impact replication. So what happens in this solution? I'll go over the diagram shortly. But basically, we replicate the data while your workloads are still running. So if you have hundreds of VMs with very large data disks and many OS disks and all of that, we ensure that the replication is minimal impact. Your workloads can continue to run while that data is being migrated over or replicated over. We use some cool technology like Leadbat that actually allows the host to take advantage of unused network and CPU capacity to do this. Additionally, there's minimal cutover time. So what I just talked about was replication, but when you actually want to switch the VMs from vCenter VMs to Arc VMs on Azure Stack HCI, This is a very minimal way of doing it. I'll go over how we do this, but it is very low downtime end to end. It'll fit within a maintenance window. So there's no concern there. And then finally, of course, it's flexible. We support a wide range of the guest OSs that you actually want to migrate out from VMware to Azure Stack HCI. So we support Windows Server 2008 upwards and various different Linux distros and versions as well. And then moving quickly to the updates as well. So the big major update that I'm on here to share about is our public preview. We just released public preview of Azure Migrate from VMware to Azure Stack HCI the beginning of October. And with that, we've seen many more users, much more feedback, much more improvements that we've made. We also have monthly refreshes. So we've released one in October and November that address key customer bugs, key customer feature requests. That is where static IP migration support is coming in. And I put a few resources and contact for the entire team for us here. But moving on, just to make sure I fit within the time, I'm going to go quickly over what the actual process looks like from a diagram perspective so you can understand how our solution does all the things that I just talked about, like agentless migration, like no impact replication. So let me just set the stage here a little bit. So here is a typical, let's say, user environment. We have on the left, the vCenter environment on your on-premises network. And on the right, you have a target HCI cluster. On the left, you have some workloads running. Let's say that there's a few Windows VMs and a Linux VM running for simplicity. On the top, we have the cloud, the Azure portal. This is where the Azure Migrate service itself lives. So the first step in any migration using our solution is setup and discovery. So just a few prerequisites to call out is that you will need at least one storage path and logical network configured on your target HCI cluster. You can have more than one, but you need at least one that the migrated VMs will use. And then the user would go in and create a new project, and they would generate a source appliance key. This is basically a hash text that will kind of link the cloud to the on-premises environment. So then the user would go in and install a Windows Server 2022 VM in their vCenter environment. This is our source appliance, and you would download some bits. You could either do this via zip or OVA. And then you would link the source appliance to the cloud, to your project with that key that you just generated. Then you'd go ahead and do the exact same process on the target side as well. So you'd create the Windows Server 2022 VM, install the target appliance bits, link it with your target key. And at this point, you have full visibility into your source and target environment. And you can start discovery on the source, where the Azure Migrate appliance actually talks to vCenter. It gets inventory of all the VMs that are running on your source environment. And from here, you can go on to the next step, which is replication. So the first step in this is initiating replication. What happens here is the user select initiate replication with the selected VMs that they want to replicate. You can choose as many as you want during this process. And then the longest step happens here, which is initial replication. What this is like I was talking about, it's actually copying over bit by bit the disks associated with all of your VMs along with transfer logs. So this would be making a copy of your OS disks, your data disks. And this is a long process because, again, if you're replicating 100 VMs with each of them have 100 gigabyte data disk, it's a long process. But the key note of this stage is that this happens while your workloads will continue to run on your source VM. This is all going on in the background. You don't need to make a maintenance window for all of that. It's a really cool process. So at this point, you're actually technically ready to migrate because you have a copy of your data, but we understand that the user experience is, you want to tinker around. You want to go in and make sure that your data disks are on the right storage path. You want to make sure none of the data is corrupt. All of that takes time. So we also do Delta replications hourly, and what that does is, like the name indicates, it only replicates the delta of what's changed on your source disk. So you're not doing a huge data network transfer every hour on your network. Then a user would select ready to migrate. And at this point, what happens is one final delta replication is done between the two. And then we recommend to turn off the source VM so you don't lose any data because you want the most up-to-date data on your target. However, you don't have to. We just recommend that, and Azure Migrate provides that solution. And then at that point, the Arc Resource Bridge actually takes those migrated disks, so all of them, the OS disks and data disks associated with them, it spins them up, they boot up, and your workloads should continue to run, assuming that they're configured to on startup. And at that point, migration is done. You can select complete migration, and then we'd recommend to manually decommission the old source VM so you don't have any overlap in workloads running and all of that. But that was the quick high-level overview of how Azure Migrate works. We're super excited that we just released VMware to Azure Stack HCI migrations with Azure Migrate last month, and super excited that I could share this with you all. So I'll go ahead and let somebody else, let Gita take control.
Thank you so much. Okay. All right, I've taken control. So my team and I are researching security baselines and policies. My name is Geeta Kirshner, and I'm a lead user researcher here at within the Adaptive Cloud space, and I'm supporting the security group. And so we recognize that the end-to-end flow of determining what the right security baseline or posture is, applying those baselines, monitoring and reporting on them, et cetera, this is a highly complex process for infrastructure, specifically within the OT environment. And we wanted to research people's experiences around security configuration management for that reason, because as you all know, security misconfigurations are a leading cause of security breaches. And again, when we're talking about security configuration management, we're talking about security policies. So thinking about like password length policies, et cetera. And folks might be currently using tools like SCCM, group policy, Ansible, Puppet, et cetera. So a little bit about our project. As I mentioned, we're interested in understanding people's experiences and the current state and challenges around the security baselines, specifically for on-prem machines. So think VMs, physical servers, anything with an OS really. And these machines may or may not be Arc enabled right now. And we're interested in understanding companies' experiences in both the IT and OT environments. And because we're interested in two big areas, the people and process aspects surrounding security baselines, such as who's involved in the criteria selection, how baselines get communicated between group to group, and the tools and challenges around those tools for IT admins that are actually doing the security baseline application. We're really interested in speaking with a variety of folks, those in security, possibly governance, compliance, or audit teams, as well as IT admins that are actually doing the application and remediation work. So there's some detailed information I won't go through here. But our ask is that we're currently recruiting for user interviews. And again, we're kind of looking at two big user role groups. So IT admins or cloud engineers or server engineers for these on-prem servers, as well as folks in IT security. And we're not looking for admins of end user devices. And again, we're looking for people that have hands-on knowledge or responsibilities around setting or reporting on their system security configuration. Currently out of scope for our current project is patching or updates, threat prevention or threat hunting, malware analysis, et cetera. We're not exploring those topics at this time. So we are conducting user interviews starting next week and going into early December. There's some flexibility into January as well, since we know we're running up against the holidays. And we're hoping to have about an hour, hour and a half long conversations, either one-on-one or small group formats for allowing deeper conversations. And if your company is interested in participating in this research to help us understand what your current experience is like, then you can reach out to me via email or find me on LinkedIn. And happy to take any questions as well in the chat. Thank you so much. I'll pass it off to the next person.
Hi, everyone. My name is Rebecca Holt, and I'm a product manager on our security team for Arc-enabled Kubernetes clusters. And I'm really excited. We want to announce a public preview for a new Arc extension that's coming out that I know we've had a ton of asks for from different enterprise customers over the past couple of years. So one of the key things that customers want to do with Arc-enabled clusters is use them to connect to other downstream devices, whether that be in a factory, it could be in a retail setting, in some energy space, and use those devices and connect to them via secrets. And the problem that a lot of people face today is that when you pull secrets down into your cluster, a lot of times you need to have connectivity, even if the cluster goes offline for a short period of time and you have intermittent connectivity issues. And up until now, we haven't had a great solution for that, where you can store all of your secrets in Azure Key Vault and have the great features that Azure Key Vault provides for storing and maintaining and rotating your secrets, all of the auditability and observability, while also having the ability to use those secrets in your Kubernetes cluster at the edge and use it to connect with whatever hardware and sensors you need to leverage. And so this new extension actually does that for you. It gives you the ability to configure which secrets you want to pull down into your cluster. You can leverage secrets in all the standard pathways that Kubernetes provides via Kube API. You could mount it as a volume to your pod. You can use environment variables, whatever pathway you prefer, which really means that your workloads don't have to have knowledge of how to connect to Azure Key Vault. So it lets you just keep them focused on standard Kubernetes workflows and make them movable across other platforms as well. As I mentioned, it supports offline access. So technically they can be offline as long as your secret hasn't rotated, but it supports intermittent connectivity. So you need to be online at some point so that you can initially pull those secrets down to the cluster. And anytime there's a rotation, you can also pull them down. And as being part of the security team, of course, we've spent quite a bit of time thinking about how to secure this appropriately. Happy to talk about it in more depth. And we've also got a bunch of background on that in our documentation as well. So I'll talk through a quick overview of what the workflow is, and then we'll give a quick demo of how to use it. So the way it works on your cluster is you will have two different custom resource types that you're defining. One defines the connection pathway to your Azure Key Vault, and we call that the secret provider class. So you put in things like what vault you're trying to access, what identity you're using to access it, things like that. And the second is your secret sync configuration, where you define how do I want the secret stored in my cluster, the version number of the secrets, and things like that. And then once you've actually created that, automatically the extension will pick up that new configuration and it'll try to pull secrets down into your cluster. And if your cluster is offline, it'll wait until the next connectivity period so you can pull those secrets down to your cluster. And again, this is really ideal for those enterprise settings where you might have some offline concerns, like a factory or a restaurant or something like that, where you usually have connectivity, but if you do go offline, it's a huge impact, and you want to make sure you can still maintain connectivity there. So just from a very high level, there's kind of two parts of the configuration. First, you start with your cloud side, create an Azure Key Vault the same way you normally would, create your secrets, and then set up an Azure identity and Entra identity that you can use to access that secret. So give it permissions to view and read the secret. And then you will federate that identity with a Kubernetes service account that has access to the secret store within your cluster. And then once you have that in place, you'll go to the cluster and you will configure those two files I talked about, your custom resources, and you'll define as part of them, what namespace is going to have access to the secret within the cluster. And you can set a lot of different variable fields. I put a couple of examples in here in case anyone wanted to read through them, but there's a lot of additional options you can see in our documentation as well. So I will put a link to all of this in the chat, but this feature is currently in public preview, and we would love your feedback. If you have ideas of additional features that you want to see around this or anything like that, please let us know. There should be links on the documentation for you to provide feedback there as well, and I'll put it in the chat in just a minute. And with that, we'll switch over to a live demo. Sam?
Thank you. Yeah. So let me share my screen and I'll give you a demonstration of this in action. So I've already done a bit of setup in Azure, which would be in our quick start guide if you want to go for the full steps. But I have a key vault already created, and inside of it, I'm going to create a secret. I'm going to call it hello, and I'm just going to give it a simple value of hello. There we go. So now that's created, I'm going to jump over to Visual Studio Code, where I have got access to a Kubernetes cluster running already, and I've already installed the secret store extension, and that is already set up. And currently, I have no secrets. So, as Rebecca mentioned, there's now 2 resources we need to create in the cluster in order to start syncing secrets. This first one, the secret provider class, it needs a bit of configuration, which ultimately comes down to telling it where this that secret we just created was. So this was the name of my key vault, and then this was the name of the secret. It was called hello. And then second, we need to create a secret sync resource, which references that first resource, and ultimately it's saying take the value from that secret called hello and place it into another secret called hello inside my cluster. Additionally, we need to tell it which service account to use. This is something I've already set up in advance. For this allows permissions to access to the Azure Key Vault since there's RBAC permissions involved. So that's already set up, and I'm using a federated managed identity for that. So if I then apply those 2 resources by just doing apply secret, it gets created both of them there. And now if we do get secret, hopefully, yeah, demo works well, it's good. If we describe that, you can see, there we go, we've got this secret called hello that's been pulled in. And we can actually see, just to prove to you that it's actually got the correct value in there, I can get the value of that as well. So I'm decoding that value, and it's got the value that we set in there, hello. And so now that's in the cluster as a standard Kubernetes secret. You can use that however you like. So that could be said mounting it as an environment variable, or using it in a pod, or using it as a mount inside of a pod. And it's all available inside the cluster offline. You don't need access to the internet now once it's done that initial sync. But obviously, sometimes it's best practice to rotate secrets. So what I'm going to do is quickly go back to Azure Key Vault and simulate sort of rotating that secret by creating a new version. So I'm going to create a new version of that called hello2. Okay, you update that. And if I jump back to my command line, if I get the value of that now, it's still going to show the old value. That's because it syncs every hour by default. But just for the purpose of this demo, I can force it to apply a refresh. So if I do a refresh, there we go. And if I then run that again, hello2. So it's now successfully synced, and it accessed the internet Azure Key Vault to get that value. But once again, it no longer needs to access it. Now it's synced that value. Obviously, there's more you can do with this. So multiple versions of secrets you can pull down, multiple secrets you can have in a single file. But obviously, that's all covered in the documentation, as Rebecca mentioned. That's all for my demo.
Perfect. I will go ahead and share my screen again, but that closes out our agenda today. So I super appreciate all the presenters that went today. And that being said, are there any questions? I feel like this is everyone's favorite part, right? Everyone comes off mute and there's always a trillion questions. But it seems like the Q&A chat is half working. I will continue to look into resolving this issue because some of the presenters don't have access to the Q&A. So I know there are a couple questions for Arnav specifically for Arc server updates. So I posted those in the chat. And if you don't have access to the chat, I can tell you it's because you aren't currently a part of the Teams chat. So if you go to I can post it in the, well, I guess it doesn't matter if I post in the chat because you won't be able to see it. But if you go to aka.ms AWS Azure Adaptive Cloud GitHub. You can find our public repository there. It's in these slide decks and these regular recordings. So if you go to any of the recordings on YouTube, you can find this information there for the specific link. But that being said, you should be able to join the Teams channel from that GitHub. There's a link at the bottom within the meeting recordings, links and that type of thing. So if you have any guests, I think there's a question in the Q&A section as well on how other folks can join. Links are there in the GitHub page. So with that in mind, are there any, I guess, specific questions that didn't get answered? I know that, like I said, there were quite a few Q&A questions. I don't know if we still have Arnav here on the call. I think he might have dropped off, actually. He did provide, if you don't have access to the chat, he did say for WS Paygo questions, please email me at arnavc@microsoft.com. Like I said, he doesn't have access to the Q&A. But with that in mind, yeah, are there any questions for any of the other presenters that have went today? Feel free to come off mute or raise your hand. I feel like everyone's shy right now. No questions? I know some questions were.
I just posted in the group channel chat. Could you just share the slide deck, because I missed the first half of the.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you. This is the GitHub right here. And this slide deck that we went over today will be posted to this GitHub. All of our previous slide decks are posted again to this GitHub, as well as the recordings, the YouTube links, everything you need to join the Teams channel. That's all located here. But Carl, it looks like you have a question.
Hello. Yeah, I'm not sure if we can still ask questions now. So my question was asked in the chat. It's about the Azure Migrate VMware to Azure Stack HCI, which is amazing. Thank you for working on that. It is a bit technical question. So when we have VMware VMs, usually they have the BIOS flag and not OEFI flag, and it seems like happening like all that our BIOS are ending up in generation 1 Hyper-V VMs, and all that have UEFI migrating to UEFI and generation 2 Hyper-V VMs. And so far, I have not found a supported solution from Microsoft to generate to move from generation 1 to generation 2 Hyper-V VMs. So how can we proceed from here? Because most of VMs on VMware will have BIOS flags and not UEFI flags. I hope the point is clear.
Yeah, the point is clear. I can, and that's a great question. I can take a stab at it from the Azure Migrate perspective. It may not be the best answer you want to hear, but
yeah, sure.
In terms of Azure Migrate, we keep the same flags that are set on the source VM. So if they're configured as Gen 1 BIOS, we keep that, and it'll be migrated as a Gen 1. And then same with Gen 2. We do that for a few reasons. It's mainly to maintain that there's functionality. We don't want to. I kind of answered this in the chat as well. We're purely agnostic to the workloads and how your VM is actually configured on the source. We actually don't even have the credentials to go in and change any flags on your disk. Sure. We don't want those credentials because we don't want to, violate any security or privacy on those VMs. However, we have ensured, and we do this all within our test suites and all of that Gen 1 and Gen 2 VMs, in terms of an Arc VM perspective, are supported. So they will be supported. They will spin up, they will provision, and then any day 2 kind of actions that you want to do on these VMs, like enable guest management, install extensions, all of that, those will be supported on both Gen 1 and Gen 2. So Migrate itself doesn't touch the flags. We don't configure them, but we make sure that the experience afterwards is as great as it can possibly be.
I see a point, Ruben. Thanks for clarifying that. So my issue with that, without going into lengths, but all Gen 1 VMs may not be intended by the customer to be Gen 1. So they most of the time don't care on VMware to configure BIOS or OAFI because it didn't serve a point. But now with Windows Server 2022 and 25, we have VBS and VBS not working with generation 1 and so on, like even thinking about trusted VMs and so on, or enabling virtualized TPM and so on and so on. So, and my problem is we cannot migrate from Gen 1 to Gen 2 by Microsoft tools. So that's an issue. So maybe something could be done here. I know it's not the problem of the Azure Migrate. I see your point. Thanks.
No, it's a great point, and it's actually great to hear this as well. This is something that we can definitely consider and see how it works into our timeline and if it's even technically feasible as well. So thank you for bringing it up.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thanks for the question. Looks like there is another question, so feel free to come off mute, Zaharia.
Yes, I'm Marius. Hello. It's only administrative one. We intend to include someone new in this working group. So please remind us the procedure to follow it. Thank you.
Yeah, of course. So if you go, I'm sharing the slide deck right now. Let me go right back to this link. So if you go to aka.ms/Azure Adaptive Cloud GitHub, there you can tell folks that are interested in joining this call. They can request to join the Teams channel through there. They can similarly get the .ics file to put the recurring calendar invite in their Outlook. And they can also find our previous recordings and slide decks also through that page. So that's like the one-stop shop basically for all the resources that you need for this call essentially. Hopefully that answers your question, Zaharia.
Okay, thank you so much. I'm Mario.
Yeah, of course. Perfect. Any other questions? I know Jamie, I was in the middle of typing a response and then my Teams glitched out. Jamie had asked, these meetups are really useful. Does Microsoft run meetups for other areas? Is there a list anywhere? So I am not familiar with any other, I guess, meetups that are somewhat similar to this. That being said, I am happy to do some digging. I know that there's MVP calls, there's regular IoT calls, but from that, I'm not sure what else is available. I can definitely look more into that. Brian, it looks like you have another question.
No, I just wanted to add on to that. Most of the product groups, especially if they've got GitHub repositories, so like the Bicep team, for example, they have a community call. I'm a working group member for the PowerShell community. We've got multiple different community calls as well. The Azure, what they've called themselves now, the Verified Modules community, they have community calls. There's a lot of them going on. It is kind of difficult sometimes to find where they are and who's running them and when they're running, but there's all of those. And then there's also the Azure Tech groups on Meetup, which is community driven, not Microsoft driven, user group meetups all across the world. And there's the data version of that as well for all the data platform stuff. There's also then all of the M365 ones as well, which I won't go into, but you can understand now Microsoft does lots and lots of things with lots of tech. There's lots and lots of meetups going on, and probably going to be a lot more in 2025 than there was this year, in previous years.
Great. I appreciate that information, Ryan. If you have anything else or any links you want to share with that, feel free to post them in the chat, assuming you have chat access. But yeah.
I joined from my own tenant, not from in the Microsoft tenant. That's why I didn't have chat access. And that's a common thing I need to remember. And I think others also should remember for joining these calls, to join from the Microsoft tenant if you can, because that will give you full access in the meeting.
Good to know. All right. Well, it is 12:01. So with that being said, our next Adaptive Cloud community call will be in December. I think we're going to have another session, basically just a debrief of Ignite and what happened through there. It looks like there might be another question, so I can stay a few minutes afterwards, but just wanted to tell everyone before everyone drops off. Thanks for attending today. We're always looking for feedback and topics that you would like to be covered. So please feel free to fill out that form that I've linked there. We love to hear back from you all to see what topics you would like to hear discussed in our next calls. But with that in mind, you can go ahead and come off mute if you have a question, Vincent.
Oops, my mistake. No problem. Thanks a lot for
Oh,
the
no
meeting.
worries. No worries. All right. Well, that's everything for today. So thanks everyone for attending. We'll see you back in December.